My name is Ruth Lawrence, and I will be your host this morning. Welcome, one and all, to the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission's webinar. And today is part two. We'll be exploring part two of the prior learning assessment recognition framework. Now, we're under the theme this morning, reflections on best practices and innovative solutions. Now, we know that the J-TEC has prided itself over the years as it relates to advancing the tertiary landscape. And certainly this is why we have webinars such as this, so we can advance that agenda. Now, before we go any further, I want to bring at this time, or to welcome rather, Mr. Damian Black, who is the Executive Director of the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission. So Dr. Black, I want to welcome you, sir, and also to ask you to give us a little bit of overview and opening remarks as we progress this morning. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all who are joined us via the platform, Zoom, as well as those who are with us through our J-TEC TV, our YouTube channel. A very good morning to you. We come together to discuss the whole matter of PLAR in higher education. Now, what is PLAR? The professionals on the call will know and understand, but we want you as members of the wider public to understand and appreciate the importance of the concept, prior learning assessment and recognition. When it is that we speak in terms of this matter, we are dealing with an issue that has to do with to what extent we can assist members of the larger population to be able to have their skills, their learning assessed and certified. This is critical. In Jamaica, as it is now, we function in a society where approximately 65% of individuals are within the prime working age population of the labor force function without qualifications. Now, this has a significant drag on their ability to earn, to compete effectively within the labor market, to be able to define and determine positive options for themselves. And so when we speak about flexible learning pathways, we have to acknowledge here is how do we treat with those individuals to ensure that they are able to participate meaningfully and to be able to enjoy the options associated with being able to learn, being able to advance in their careers, being able to earn more, and being able to contribute in a productive manner. So this morning's webinar is designed to engage the thought, and we want to be able to share with all of us, those who are joining us to present, as well as members of the general public. We want to be able to speak to matters associated with our experiences in prior learning assessment and recognition. What is it? The institutions that will be speaking this morning, they will present from their perspectives, their experiences. So we seek to learn together and thus impact the Jamaican society for the better. So I want to welcome all of you. I want to acknowledge the importance of this webinar. I want us to certainly be engaged, ask our questions, interact with the presenters, and certainly be able then to learn more as to what is happening within higher education institutions, training organizations with respect to the application of prior learning assessment and recognition. The Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, as a regulatory body for the tertiary education space, the higher education sector, we have a mission to ensure that through the National Qualifications Framework, all qualifications that are offered or awarded in Jamaica satisfy minimum quality standards. As such, we are determined to ensure that we regulate appropriately and with relevance the provision of prior learning assessment and recognition principles, the practice, the professionals who engage and participate in it. Our mandate is therefore to ensure that the higher education space within Jamaica makes this contribution to minimizing, to dealing with this massive problem that we face of the underqualification of the Jamaican workforce and the extent to which we might enable persons to be able to live meaningfully and to practice their trades and engage appropriately. So again, thank you so very much. Back to you, Ruth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Black. And certainly this is a conversation that we definitely need to have in this day and age. And certainly we want to applaud the work that the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission is doing as it relates to the advancement of the parallel learning assessment recognition. Thanks so much, Dr. Black. At this time, we'll be having an overview, which will be done by Mrs. Nordia Seymour Hall, and she is the Director for International Relations and Qualifications Division here at the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission. Mrs. Hall, it's over to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ruth. And thank you, Dr. Black. Now, parallel learning assessment and recognition, it is something that we're all excited about. And indeed, it is a big part of our national qualifications framework. All along the path of the framework, we must be able to ensure that persons are able to benefit from learning that they've had before. When we think about prior learning assessment and recognition, there are so many critical things that J-TEC has been doing. We've been engaged in capacity building. We've been engaged in ensuring that standards and guidelines are in place. We've been engaged in ensuring that micro-credentials and PLAR can work together. We've also been engaged in ensuring that there are guidelines in place for the recognition of refugees and displaced persons. We are also keen on ensuring that assessment and placement of qualifications on the National Qualifications Framework of Jamaica recognizes prior learning. And of course, critically, a part of our standard is ensuring that persons are able to access programs in a flexible manner. Credit accumulation and transfer is also very critical. We must ensure that PLAR and credit accumulation and transfer schemes can work together. Now, where are we now? We've established the PLAR standards and guidelines. We've developed a stakeholder engagement strategy. Already, we have started to engage higher education institutions in capacity building and service delivery support. We are also establishing a PLAR service provider database, and of course, we'll ensure that there is continuous monitoring and evaluation. The standards and guidelines that we've developed, they are based on UNESCO's guiding principles, and they're approved by our Qualifications and Human Capital Development Committee. The standards and guidelines also guides entities' policy development, whether you're an organization or an institution that offers education and training. Our stakeholder sensitization strategy has seen us meeting with the higher education institutions in the field. Of course, we've hosted a community certification fair at Trenchtown Polytechnic College, and we're looking at partnering with Excelsior Community College this year, and many other institutions will be a part of this, because we must ensure that members of our community can access qualifications. In terms of capacity building, a PLAR techniques course has been developed along with the attendance curriculum, and we've had 24 persons benefiting from that. Our webinar series, those are ongoing. Today, we're having a webinar. In terms of support visits, that is our next step. We want to observe the implementation of PLAR within institutions and provide feedback as necessary. We're developing a PLAR database. We want to ensure that there is a comprehensive overview of PLAR practice offerings and general detailed. Continuous monitoring, a comprehensive overview of PLAR practice and offerings are detailed. Continuous monitoring and evaluation, annual report. In our annual report, we've captured your PLAR offerings. And of course, in terms of our quality assurance, we are ensuring that inspections and assessment of qualifications includes PLAR. In terms of recognition of prior learning for refugees, we know that refugees exist in Jamaica. They are mainly from Haiti, Cuba, and Venezuela. And this is something that we hardly think about, but they are here. All refugees have a right to the recognition of prior learning based on the international conventions that deal with qualification recognition. We recognize too that the principles, the guidelines that are drafted to support recognition of prior learning for refugees and displaced persons who are undocumented must be in place. And so, guess what? We have drafted those principles and guidelines. In terms of integrating prior learning with micro-credentials and credit accumulation and transfer schemes, we've developed guidelines for the implementation of a credit accumulation and transfer scheme in Jamaica. And we've ensured that those are aligned to micro-credentials as well as digital badges standards. In terms of prior learning assessment, recognition, micro-credential, we have to ensure that any course that is associated with lifelong learning should be given recognition where they are listed in the NQF. Micro-credentials or short courses that are not recognized under the framework may be used as part of PLAR processes. And so we have the principles and the guidelines that are drafted to support the recognition of prior learning for all. And we must ensure as institutions that we have practices in place that can support this. And so we're happy to support you, and we're eager to hear what you've been doing within your institutions. We're eager to hear how you've been implementing PLAR. We're eager to hear how you can advance the process of ensuring that we have a well-trained workforce. We recognize that even though 94% of our population is currently employed, the vast majority of persons do not have the requisite qualifications that are needed. Many persons are underemployed. There is also the critical issue of persons basically not being fit for the current labor force as it turns over. We recognize that we are entering into a new era, and many of the skills that are relevant today will need to be transferred. People will need to be reskilled. People will need to be upskilled. And we recognize that prior learning is critical in all of those processes. And so we thank all the institutions, and we are encouraging everybody to just sit back, relax, and enjoy as they present to us what they've been doing, and they share with us the way forward as they see it and how best we can all work together to make this happen. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Hall. I think I'm going to have to pause you, well, or to backtrack a little bit. You said sit back and relax. Today, we're going to be working, right? But certainly, thank you so much for bringing much needed context to the prior learning assessment recognition framework. And I love the fact that the work that is being done is being bolstered through capacity building, the standard, ensuring that there's standardization across the board. That in particular, we do need those frameworks in place. But what I loved about what you said earlier, Mrs. Hall, is the fact that this is needed to ensure that persons are constantly upskilling themselves, because we know the world is changing. And so this is why discussions like this, such as this, is very, very critical to our advancement as a nation. Thank you so much, Mrs. Hall. And just in case you are joining us in YouTube land, we want to welcome you, certainly want to welcome you to the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission's Prior Learning Assessment Recognition webinar, where we're under the theme this morning, reflections on best practices and innovative solutions. And we want this morning for you to be very, very involved in the discussions. Ask your questions. We're willing to ensure that they are answered. All right. And at this time, I just want to backtrack a bit and to give you some information in terms of why we are here today. Now, the prior learning assessment recognition really has become increasingly important because we want to ensure that our population, that they are focused and that there is development as it relates to their skills. Now, we do know that naturally for persons to gain meaningful employment, skills training is important, but also skill certification is equally a priority, and thus why we're here. And so as a part of the efforts this morning to advance the PLAR, this certification course, a series of webinars, which this is included, has been held to ensure that there is reflective practice and innovative sharing of solutions to advance the PLAR. Now, this morning, we do have some astute ladies with us this morning, practitioners in their own right, who will be sharing with us this morning how it is that they have been advancing the PLAR within their given institutions. And I want to bring to the fore this morning, and just to highlight them this morning, Miss Sandy Lawrence, and of course, she is the PLA coordinator for the University of Technology. We have also this morning, Miss Patrice Bowen, and she's the director for continuing studies at the Micro University. We have also Miss Karen Gale, and she's the principal for the Institute of Workforce and Education Development. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Tatrice Batchelor, the principal lecturer at the Trenchtown Polytechnic College. Now, these ladies will be doing their just brief presentations in terms of how they have been championing the cause of PLA within their respective institutions. And at this time, I want to make welcome to the fore Miss Sandy Lawrence. But before I invite Miss Lawrence to speak on what it is that she is doing in her institution, I have to read her bio. I have to tell you a little bit about her, and then I'll invite her to share accordingly. Now, Mrs. Lawrence is a wife and a mother of two. She holds a Master of Science in Education and Educational Administration, a Bachelor of Arts in English, and a postgraduate diploma in secondary education. She has served in the field of education for the past 24 years. 8 of which were spent lecturing at the tertiary level, and the last 8 as a prior learning assessment coordinator at the University of Technology. Now, based on this, we know that Ms. Lawrence is very, very much versed in the whole notion of PLAR. And so right now, Ms. Lawrence, my namesake, I want to invite you now I want you to join us this morning and just to share in terms of what it is that you are doing in advancing that. Now, in your current role, I know that you assess mature applicants and students to determine their eligibility for matriculation and module exemptions. So, Ms. Lawrence, it is over to you at this time. All right, I believe Ms. Lawrence might be having some technical challenges, but nonetheless, we are advancing the conversations nonetheless. And again, as I said before, the successful implementation really of the PLAR really calls for a supportive regulatory environment, which is clear, and also that we advance and basically articulate the benefits to our stakeholders. Now, just in layman terms, what is the PLAR? Have you ever heard on the spot assessment and certification? In a nutshell, that's what it is. You come into the fore with the skills that you would have garnered, not necessarily through a formal means of education, but what you would have garnered through experiences, through observation, you being assessed, and hey, getting your certification right on the spot. And this is really where we're going in this time, in this era, to know that as our people advance in their skills and their abilities, that they are able to advance and to become certified in that regard. And this is why, of course, we are here to have this discussion on the best practices. Now, is there anyone? I want for you to type in the chat. I do know we have several persons online. Just quickly type in the chat and tell me, what are some of the things that you possibly want to learn more about today? I know that you've come with your expectations. You want to know a lot more about the PLAR. You want to know or to purport, some solutions. I want for you to type in the chat real quick, what are some of the things that you would want for us to share this morning? Or what do you hope to learn from us this morning? Just type it in the chat real quick. All right, so no problem. So I believe, as I said before, I do apologize, Miss, we're having some technical challenges with Miss Lawrence at this time. I don't know why my namesake has left me by myself, but nonetheless, we do have other persons who will be chiming in. And at this time, I'm gonna jump to Miss Patricia Bowen. And Ms. Bowen is the Director for Continuing Studies at the Michael University College. And you know the gist by now. We have to give you a little overview as to what it is that Ms. Bowen does. And she's looking quite studying this morning. Good to have you, Ms. Bowen. All right, so Mrs. Bowen is the Acting Director of the School of Continuing Studies, excuse me, she's the Acting Director of the School of Continuing Studies, is an organizer, results-oriented business educator who is currently responsible for the project management for the Ministry of Education, Michael University College Sixth Form Pathways Program in the SCS. Mrs. Bowen is a Hart NSTA Industrial Resource Developer from 2019 to present. So you know that she's pretty versed in this area, right? And has served as team lead for the revision of competency standards and courses. In this regard, she brings to the table expertise in the adoption of standards and the creation of short courses to facilitate skills development in addition to management acumen and project leadership. Mrs. Bowen, I'm excited to have you. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. I am fine. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. And so it's your time to take the floor.
All right. I'm going to share my screen.
Standards and
colleagues, good morning. It is my pleasure to be here and to speak to you a little bit about PLAR at the Michael University College. We have bought into the vision. We have commended ourselves to PLAR from a long time. And so in order to do this, we had to justify to ourselves, why are we going to take on this PLAR thing? And we recognize that PLAR saves time. It makes no sense we reinvent the wheel. Persons may argue that, hey, if they come to University College and for 4 years, you would earn more. But there's a bigger picture, as we have there, of national development, where we have to balance, yes, our earning and profitability motive against that of national development. PLAR saves money. If persons have skills, it makes no sense we reinvent the wheel. PLAR builds confidence, and that's a big deal for our employees in the workplace. When persons are certified, you will find that they get that sense of self-efficacy that allows them to work and be confident in what they are doing. And also, PLAR provides access to employment. Now, at the Michael, we do have a PLAR policy, and an excerpt that I'm going to share with you says that the Michael University College recognizes that many of its students enter the institution with valuable knowledge and skills gained through a range of personal, professional, vocational, and community contexts. The University College endorses the concept that learning takes place not only within formal educational environments, but also outside the classroom. The University College therefore accepts applicants who, when assessed, can demonstrate the relevant knowledge and skills and will give credit for these competencies when evaluated against a set of standards, competencies, or learning outcomes. University College Prior Learning Assessment and Recognition Policy therefore seeks to provide the guidelines for the evaluation of these prior learning and the knowledge gained through work or life experiences to ensure that the assessment of evidence provided by the student is sufficient to support their claim for competence against a given set of standards of our learning outcomes. And this was important to what was said earlier in terms of how do we ensure that persons are not receiving certification because they exist or because we want to certify them, but that the competence that they have is recognized and is against a set of criteria that is transferable across whichever space they are in. And so at the MICO, we have built our PLAR on 3 pillars. We recognize your prior learning. If you're coming from another institution, we want to accept what you are bringing to the table here and work with you as to where you're going next. Secondly, we recognize your prior experience. The fact is, as said in the policy, there is space where persons may not have gone to a formal institution, but they have the knowledge, and in many cases, they can outperform many of those who would have gone to institutions. And we recognize your prior certification, and we will use that to help you to chart a path to where you want to go next. With respect to using PLAR, the MICO has extensive experience in that area. We would have at the pre-university level work with students to ensure their matriculation. I will speak a little bit about the PUMP program in a little bit, but we also use it for our early childhood, and that's a big deal because when you look at our society, the fact is many of the teachers who are in the early childhood system are now being certified, but that was not always so. In many cases, these teachers would have been working for years and they would not have gone on the government payroll because they're not certified, and they would also lack any potential for a pension. And so certifying our teachers, ensuring that the investment in early childhood will reap the benefits that we are hoping, is something that is dear to the heart of the University College. We want to ensure that our early childhood teachers are equipped with the skills, and so we look at where they are and we help them to get where they want to be. With respect to music, that is something that University College is big on. We are a major teacher training institution for music in Jamaica. But we recognize that not all our musicians or music teachers, they have the knowledge, but they may not have done music in CXC. Does it mean that they can't get in the classroom? Is it that they can't be certified as a musician? No. MICO recognizes that we are here to help. We also look at advanced placements and mature entry, where persons are able to do their challenge exams and get advanced placements in some cases based on where they are in the scheme of qualifications. We also, through the School of Continuing Studies, help our teachers and the general society to get certification in areas of interest. So in many cases, we provide a lot of stackable courses where a teacher in the classroom may recognize that she's dealing with children with special needs, and hey, I am teaching them math, but there are some additional skills that I will need to be able to help my students. And so you can come to the MICO in the School of Continuing Studies and you can get a certificate course in handling these special learning challenges as a teacher. We also would have used the PLAR for assessment for our postgrad diploma in teaching and also the post-diploma in school management. Now, I want to take just a moment to share just one single one of our success stories, and I'll give you the context. The PUMP program, called the Pre-University Men's Program, is something that is unique to the MICO. It is a program where we accept at-risk men in our society and we help them qualify. So we look at how many CXCs they may have, whatever certifications, if any, and we get them to the place where they are able to matriculate for the University College. When we do that, then you find that they're able to go through because they would have stabilized during their time in the PUMP program. And it is not just academics. We have a lot of mentoring that takes place in that program that gives them the skill and the fortitude to manage a bachelor's program. And so Mr. Mikhail Mackenzie would have come in through our PUMP program. And we used PLAR and helped him to matriculate for the University College. He actually went on to be the Gilded President of the University College. He earned his bachelor's in education in industrial technology and now holds a master's in educational leadership. He's a justice of the peace, and he's now serving as head of department at the school where he is. This is a success story because we would have taken someone from where they are with probably persons would have assumed no qualification for university or no prospects, but from where you are to where you want to be. And I only shared one because of the time that I would have been given. But just to speak a little bit about the way forward. The MICO, through the School of Continuing Studies, recognizes the need that there is space for PLAR, and we need to take an organized approach to it. So we have given ourselves to be a part of the national conversation. And this national conversation is not just about competition amongst universities to get all who's out there. Let's fight for them. But let us recognize what's coming from each other's output and see how we can work together to ensure that our country can train persons not just for the local market, but also for the international market, because the fact is, Jamaicans good when they're good. We are good at what we do when we decide to do it well. And so if we can be a part of that national conversation, then we are all in. Another part that we are looking at is partnering with organizations and persons to say, hey, what skill sets do you have? What qualifications do you have? Is it that you don't want to be a teacher, but you want this information? Coming to us, we can give you a 3+1 model. We can give an associate degree model and create a path for you to move on to where you want to go. We want to liaise with organizations and say, come on, describe your staff to us. What are your training needs for your staff? What are your certification needs for your staff, in an effort to help them to qualify their staff and also excel, allow persons to achieve that level of self-efficacy and self-actualization that they so desire. And we are working on our stackables. We are recognizing the advanced placement of an exemption and matriculation when it comes down to qualification. And we are recognizing that if we can create courses that are appealing to persons, then we can help them. One of the courses we are working on now is podcasting and monetizing your social media platform. We have great content creators in Jamaica, but not all of them know how. Can we certify you if you know how? Or can we actually train you if you don't know how? So that is the approach that we are taking it from. At the MICO, we are looking at where you have been. And when we assess where you have been, we will look at where you are now. We will identify those gaps and help you to design a path to where you want to go. So especially for our pump men and our pre-university early childhood educators, we have a one-on-one approach. It's not a blanket approach. We use the standards by university and we establish how we can help them to achieve their goal. Because the fact is, when we are able to certify our country, then all of us as a country and as a university, we will benefit. I thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely brilliant. Miss Boyne, I didn't know all these things were happening at the MICO University College.
Big things happening down here, Miss.
No, it's more than big things. It's mega things. A lot. No, you know, one of the things that I loved about what you spoke about just now was a success story of Mr. Mikhail Mackenzie, and how you would have brought him from one stage to now being employed, having a master's degree and leading in his area. And I mean, if he wasn't given that chance, possibly he would just be another young man out on the streets. So
and that's a big part of the PUM program, a major thrust that we have. We are recognizing our need to certify our men, make them employable. And the fact is, our classroom need more men. And so a big part of it is putting our men in our classroom to stabilize the space, because our boys need to see men in the classroom.
I absolutely love it. Meeting them where they are and taking them to where they need to go. That will forever be etched in my memory right now as it relates to what it is that you're doing at the Michael University. I want to pause a little bit for about 5 minutes to welcome questions. If you are online and you have any questions for Mrs. Bowen, please, this is your time to ask your questions, or maybe a little later in the panel discussion, if you so please or so desire, you can feel free to ask your questions. But now is the time to share or to ask if you are unclear about anything. But really, really grateful. I noticed that there is a, okay, right, and Mr. Haldane Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Is
yes,
saying in the chat,
sir.
our girls also need to, hallelujah.
It needs to be a safe space, and I'm glad you said yes. The
Absolutely.
needs to be there, and we are taking a step at the Michael to ensure that we contribute and play our part in advancing the welfare. So that is our perspective here at the Michael.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Thanks so much for that, Mr. Johnson. And definitely, we are looking forward to see how best we can advance in this regard. Any questions from the presentation? Any questions? The floor is yours. Thanks so much, Mr. Haldane Johnson. It's really, really good to hear from you, sir. Any questions? If not, if there be no other question, we're just going to go on to our next presenter. I believe Miss Sandy Lawrence, and of course she would have been introduced prior to now, but what I will do for the benefit of those who wouldn't have joined us earlier, I'm just going to read a brief synopsis of her profile, and then I will hand over to Miss Lawrence to do her presentation. Now, Mrs. Lawrence is a wife and she's a mother of two. She holds a she holds rather a Master in Education and Education Administration, a Bachelor of Arts in English, a postgraduate diploma in secondary education. She also served in the field of education for the past 24 years, 8 of which were spent lecturing at the tertiary level, and the last 8 as a prior learning assessment coordinator at the University of Technology. Miss Lawrence, are you there? I noticed that the technology did not want it to be great earlier.
Good morning, Miss Lawrence. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, my namesake. How art thou?
Fine, thank you.
All right, so it's over to you, Miss Lawrence, for your presentation.
Quite a challenge. Let me first of all apologize again for not being able to kickstart this program, but I'm here now, and let's see how quickly we can get through before the internet starts acting up again. So as I said before, I'm the Prior Learning Assessment Coordinator at J-TEC, and I am also happy to be a part of this webinar to share with you what has been happening at J-TEC as it relates to prior learning assessment. Now, just to give you a brief overview, at J-TEC, we have been using PLA for undergraduate matriculation, graduate matriculation, and for module exemptions or acceleration through undergraduate courses of study. But this morning, I'm going to be sharing with you some success stories as it relates to our attempts to facilitate graduate matriculation. So if you'll allow me to share my screen, let me just bring that up. Please let me know if you're seeing my screen.
Yes, we're seeing your screen. Go ahead.
All right, great. So I noticed Ms. Bowen has a similar tagline to mine. I was wondering if she got a peep on my slide. But our aim is to reach people. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My apologies. With the technical glitches this morning, I forgot to put my phone on silent. My apologies. So back to what we were talking about. Graduate matriculation via PLA at J-TEC Jamaica is designed to reach people where they are and to take them to where they want to be. So I see that we're pretty much on the same page, Michael. And it's good that Ms. Bowen mentioned that we ought not to see ourselves as competitors per se, but as teammates in a sense, because we all belong to the same nation and we all want what is best for our people. So I like to use graphics to explain a point. So if you take a look at this picture with me, let's call this man John Brown. John Brown is seeking to get to the top of this mountain to achieve success. But look at what he has to go through. First of all, he has to cross this river. What do we see in the river? Alligators, yes. Then he has to go up this mountain. What do we see here? Thunderstorm.
Recording in progress.
And he has to go all the way up to get to success. How do we help John Brown to get to where he wants to be? Well, at J-TEC in 2016, formal discussions began regarding matriculation into taught graduate courses of study by a PLA. Prior to that, there was some amount of PLAing going on, but the formal discussions really began in 2016. And in 2017, our policy, PLA matriculation policy, was revised to formalize the practice. And since then, we've had several applicants gaining entry into our taught graduate courses of study via this alternative route. And we call it an alternative route because, as we can see in the picture before, John Brown does not have a smooth transition. He does not have a linear progression towards academic achievement. He has a lot of challenges. And the challenges as depicted in the picture can correspond to many things. The term for it these days is life load. So John Brown may have work, he may have financial challenges, he may have family responsibilities, he may have illnesses to contend with, and many other challenges that John Brown could possibly have. So at J-TEC, we examine John Brown's situation and we try to reach him from where he's at to take him to where he wants to be. And so we recognize his prior learning by establishing equivalence between what is normally required for entry and John Brown's work-related experience and any relevant academic exposure he has had to the course content. So no certificate is issued per se, but an applicant like John Brown can gain entry into his desired course of study through the evaluation of his prior learning. Now we've had persons gaining entry into several of our courses of study through this route. We've had persons entering our MBA program, Masters of Science in Information Systems Management, Master in Health Administration, MSc in Nurse Anesthesia, MSc in Trauma Studies and Integrative Counseling, Master of Science in Engineering, MSc in Public Health Nutrition, and into our Doctor of Pharmacy course. And we are continually seeking persons to enter through this route because at J-TEC, we pride ourselves on having work-ready graduates. And so we really embrace persons coming in with the work readiness. We embrace persons coming in with the relevant work experience because it does add so much more to the teaching learning experience. It enriches the teaching learning experience. And so we really embrace these persons and we try to help them to get to where they want to be. Now, there are requirements though. We are not at liberty to accept persons into our programs with nothing. We have to ensure that they come with some kind of academic requirements. And so we invite persons who may have an associate degree or a diploma, and you'll notice an asterisk by diploma because there's diploma and then there's diploma, right? We ensure that whatever we accept as a diploma is in keeping with the NQFJ, ensure that we have satisfied the requirements of the Ministry of Education. We also consider professional certification, perhaps not by itself, but we look at the whole picture, right? So if someone is coming with an associate degree and some professional certification, that would really serve to, you know, beef up what it is they're coming with. But then there are persons who have the bachelor's degree, but for whatever reason, they did not acquire the required GPA score. And we know that life happens, right? And persons may, for whatever reason, they perhaps just missed the 2.7. And as a result, they cannot matriculate normally into a graduate program. And so we say, come to us. However, persons who are accepted into our graduate programs through prior learning assessment must also have a minimum of 5 years of related experience. And by that, we mean experience must be related to the proposed course of study. Once an individual satisfies those requirements, we invite them to participate in the graduate portfolio development process. Now, this is really a 1-month engagement, a 1-month course, and it includes a 3-hour portfolio development seminar, during which the PLA candidate that we call him at that point, the PLA candidate will be taught how to develop his or her portfolio in such a way that it can satisfy our instrument. It can satisfy us that, yes, he is fit for the program. The candidate will also be provided with a portfolio development manual to guide the development of the portfolio. They'll have access to the program director and the PLA unit for guidance. They'll be provided with feedback on at least one draft of their portfolio documents, and then they'll have the final submission assessed. Now, we don't usually invite any and everybody to this process. The individual must meet the requirements that were mentioned before. So we do a pre-screening to ensure that those requirements are satisfied, so that once we invite them to the graduate portfolio development process, they stand a pretty good chance of doing well. We don't handhold, we don't hold their hands necessarily, but everybody needs guidance, right? And given that most of them would not have been in a typical classroom setting for a while, we try to mold them, we try to help them to develop the skills that are required to function at the graduate level. And so the PLA candidates get a chance to not only prove that their prior learning experiences are valuable and ought to be recognized, we also seek to build their confidence. Because remember, these are persons who, once they get into the major program, they'll be rubbing shoulders with people who have their bachelor's with 2.7 and up GPA score. And so we don't want them to feel we want them to feel less than. We want to ensure that once they step into that master's program, they're confident that what they bring to the table is something that is valuable. And so throughout the discussions, we help them to build their confidence in this regard. And as I said before, several of them would not have, well, most of them would not have been in a typical classroom setting for a number of years. And so we try to help them to get back into the groove, to get back into the academic realm. So the writing, the putting together of their ideas, critical thinking, and so on. Those are things that we help them to develop during that 1-month engagement, so that when they get into the major program, no, they're not operating at a deficit. Now, I have a video that I'd like to share with you that will outline more so the successes that we have achieved. This presentation was prepared for a conference that was held in 2020. I'm a member of the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, CALE. It's an organization in the United States that has jurisdiction over prior learning assessment and other adult learning matters. And so it's a short video, it's about 7 or 8 minutes. And it really focuses on a study that was conducted with respect to our MBA students. It was a qualitative study, and I'd like to share the contents with you. Hold on, I think I'm gonna have to stop sharing and start sharing again and share sound. Give me 1 second, please.
Recording stopped.
A degree in business administration. Plus
Recording
15
in progress.
years of relevant experience. Can I gain entry into your MBA program? I have a bachelor's degree, but I don't have the required GPA score. Do I really need to pursue a bachelor's all over again to achieve the 2.7 GPA score in order to get into a master's degree? These are just some of the questions that persons have asked of the PLA unit at the University of Technology, Jamaica. Hi, I'm Sandy Lawrence, and I'm the PLA coordinator at the said university. And I'm happy this afternoon to share with you my university's experience as we seek to use the PLA mechanism as a tool to increase student intake into our graduate programs. An examination of international and local trends has shown that a master's degree is increasingly becoming the benchmark for professional qualification. So the university, in response to this, has instituted in policy the PLA mechanism as an alternative route of entry into our taught graduate courses. And this approach puts emphasis on persons' maturity, their professional experience, and their industry exposure as a basis for determining whether or not they're eligible for entry into the programs, rather than simply looking at whether or not they've acquired a bachelor's degree program. The assumption is based on the notion that graduate matriculation requirements can be met by means other than a bachelor's degree with a 2.7 GPA score. We firmly believe that related experience that is substantial enough in scope and in breadth can be used to augment certain post-secondary certification, as long as these have been obtained from a recognized or accredited institution. And so in 2017, the School of Advanced Management and the PLA unit collaborated to increase student intake into the MBA program using the PLA mechanism. Now, the purpose of this study is to determine the factors that motivate entry via PLA and to look at the impact of this on the professional and personal lives of the students. It also sought to determine the level of academic performance of these students vis-a-vis their counterparts who matriculated normally. Now, the literature doesn't speak much about matriculation via PLA. So the general factors that motivate entry into graduate courses of study were given consideration. These include the desire to advance one's skills, the desire for improved qualifications, for higher wages, for leadership positions, for increased self-confidence, and so on. And the findings of this study have really supported this research for the most part. However, there's an interesting mixture of factors as it relates to the PLA students in particular that I think is worthy of consideration. First of all, these participants are mature in age. 2 of the 5 are between the ages of 30 and 39, and 3 were above 40. And 2, the wealth of experience that they bring to the table is also a part of that interesting mix. Each of them has at least 17 years of relevant experience. In fact, one had as many as 28 years of experience. Now, when we think of this in younger, and so time is of the essence. In fact, one participant was already functioning in a senior post, but he was not fully qualified for it. And his employers were pressuring him to get the degree quickly. And 4 out of the 5 participants felt that the length of time that it would take for them to achieve their goal of a master's, it was a prohibitive factor for them. For the most part, these persons would have acquired an associate degree or a diploma many years ago. Now, according to policy, they're not able to pick up from where they left off and complete the bachelor's degree. They'd have to start from scratch. And the 6 years was a turnoff. 4 for the bachelor's, 2 for the master's. They were not prepared to spend 6 years to achieve this goal. One participant even expressed concern over the cost of pursuing both degrees. But what would have given them the confidence to feel that way? Well, the extent of their experience exceeds in a number of respects a bachelor's degree program. As one participant put it, from a professional standpoint, he had surpassed the stage of a bachelor's program. And we know that prior learning assessment seeks to mitigate duplication of learning. So those factors were what would have motivated these people to seek entry via PLA. Now, regarding the impact on their personal and professional lives, literature suggests that they would have had enhanced social identities, they would have had increased self-confidence, enhanced performance and career success, they would have achieved higher salaries, and so on. And this study really supported those claims. The participants reported an increased level of self-confidence. They now feel on par because for the most part, they were functioning at a level that was above a bachelor's level. But because they didn't have the certification to back them, they weren't recognized for what it is they do on a daily basis. They also expressed an increase in self-worth because some of their classmates who matriculated normally would rely on them for assistance in figuring out numeric and accounting concepts, as well as to understand the practical application of certain thinking higher positions because of having started the program. And at least one, she achieved self-actualization. Now you may be wondering, how are these students performing in relation to their counterparts who matriculated normally? Well, the program director reported that the MBA accepts students from various backgrounds, but the PLA students who have come in, especially those with numeric and business or technical backgrounds, they assimilated very well. In fact, the 5 students that we studied, they were able to maintain an average of between A- and B+. And any challenges that these PLA students faced were not unique to them. So in conclusion, mature people who do not possess a bachelor's degree with the required GPA score tend to gravitate towards this route of entry because, so one, they've acquired competencies that exceed that which is expected at a bachelor's level, and they're not interested in duplicating learning. This route of entry is a quicker and cheaper one towards graduate certification. Previously, they would have been overlooked for positions and promotions, but no, they want to feel on par with their contemporaries, and they want to feel on par quickly, so they choose this route. And coming out of this, they've experienced an increased self-confidence, increased self-worth, they now have higher goals, and they've achieved self-actualization. So, matriculation via prior learning assessment is worth consideration. It's worth the support from administration and from academic leaders. Thank you.
Wow. All I can say,
just
Ms.
2 more.
Lawrence.
Just 2 more slides.
2 more slides. All right, go ahead.
All right. So just wanted to share 2 testimonials. This one is from Sachelle Spencer. Let me just try to remove this. Right. So she says, as I contemplated applying to the MBA, I was a bit apprehensive as my undergraduate qualification was in another discipline and my GPA score was below what was required. However, since I've been employed in the field of administration for over a decade, I put my fears aside and applied for the program. Though I had the experience, I needed to present documentation as proof. This was facilitated through the prior learning assessment process, which allowed me to produce a portfolio detailing my personal, educational, and career experiences that would support my attempt to matriculate. Consequently, excuse me, this process has assisted with my analytic and conceptual skills. It should be noted that the PLA unit was very supportive throughout the 1-month engagement. If anyone is considering applying to UTEC Jamaica, but do not have the standard matriculation requirements, they should do so through the prior learning assessment process. And there's another one more. This one is from Terry Ann Rule, recent graduate. She said, after completing my undergraduate degree, I achieved a lower than average GPA. Though I graduated, I was disappointed with myself. I then decided some years after that it was time to continue my studies. That was when I applied to UTEC Jamaica to pursue my MBA. To my disappointment, matriculation into the postgraduate program required a GPA of 2.7. A past lecturer informed me that provision was made for potential students who did not meet the requirements to utilize the prior learning assessment route. After contacting the PLA coordinator, it was decided that based on my myriad of experiences over my work life, I was eligible to apply for the MBA through the graduate portfolio development process. The process simply required me to develop a portfolio detailing my related experiences and provide documentation to support my learning claims. Needless to say, my portfolio was accepted, and I have since completed my MBA with a GPA way over 3.0. I'm grateful for the guidance that led me to the prior learning assessment unit and the support I received as a PLA candidate. So, here endeth my presentation this morning, but I'm not sure if anyone has any questions or comments, but just to say that we are continuing in our drive to attract graduate applicants through the prior learning assessment route. We have been doing a number of presentations and having a number of promotional activities. Recently, we went to Montego Bay. You know, we have a campus in the West. So we went to Montego Bay to show that people need to be given an opportunity to excel. And as I said before, life happens and persons may, for whatever reason, just not have acquired that GPA score of 2.7.
As we advance in the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to take the opportunity to really welcome the members of the Ministry of Education's tertiary unit. I hope you are all doing well, and also to welcome the committee members of the Qualification and Human Capital Development. So all the committee members from that committee, welcome, welcome, welcome. And also the Internationalization and Standards team. I want to welcome you and thank you so much for joining us. And to the presidents, to the principals, to the respective faculty members and students who are joining us this morning, welcome, welcome, welcome again to this webinar. Now we're going to move on just now right quick to our next presenter, and she is Miss Tatrice Batchelor, and she is, oh, forgive me, to Miss Karen Gale, who is the principal of the Institute of Workforce Education and Development. And Miss Tatrice Batchelor is an educator and researcher extraordinaire with a key interest in competency-based and technical and vocational approaches in education. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree with a major in electronics and a minor in physics and a Master of Philosophy in Physics, both from the University of the West Indies, Mona. Additionally, she holds a postgraduate diploma in education and training from the Vocational Training and Development Institute, VTDI. She has contributed significantly to the development of the educational sector in Jamaica at the national and institutional level. She served as an occupational officer at the Center for Occupational Studies, that's CSO, Ministry of Education and Youth.
Ms. Lawrence, your microphone is muted.
I do apologize. I am here welcoming. I was actually in the process of welcoming Ms. Batchelor. Forgive me. I believe my mic was muted. And no, I hope you would have possibly heard me before when I would have made mention in welcoming the members of the Ministry of Education Tertiary Unit, and also the committee members of the Qualification and Human Capital Development Committee and the Internationalization and Standards team. So welcome, welcome, welcome to all our principal, administrators and students who are joining us today. At this time, we're going to go to Miss Tatrice. At this time, forgive me, we'll be going to Miss Karen Gale. Miss Karen Gale is the principal of the Institute of Workforce Education and Development. Now, Mrs. Gale is a principal of the Institute of Workforce Education and Development, IWED. Prior to this, she was the Senior Standards Development Officer at the University Council of Jamaica, UCJ, and before that, the Dean of Continuing Education and Workforce Development at the Montego Bay Community College. She has been an educator and trainer at the secondary, post-secondary, and tertiary levels and worked extensively in workforce development. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mrs. Karen Gale. Mrs. Gale, it's over to you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning to you, Mrs. Gale.
Good, thank you. Thanks to J-TEC for the invitation to be a part of this webinar. Let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are able to see your screen.
Good, thank you.
Your microphone is muted.
Ms. Gale, I believe your microphone is muted. Please unmute.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
You are welcome.
So you would have missed what I said. I said I'm representing the Institute for Workforce Education and Development, otherwise called IWED. So I will refer to it as IWED throughout this presentation. And IWED trains for workplace productivity. I'm going to tell you a little bit about IWED. So IWED is one of the companies in the manpower and maintenance services group of companies. And this slide gives a context, presents a context. The manpower and maintenance services group employs at any one time about 2,500 persons. And so IWED is that the institution within the company, within the group of companies that started by training the workers within the group. A little more about IWED. IWED is 17 years, going 18 years. By the end of this year, IWED would have been 18 years old. It's a dedicated workforce institution, specializes in workforce education and development, training people in the workforce and for the workforce. It is not, we don't consider ourselves a corporate university because we train persons within our institution and within our companies, but we also train persons in the private and public sector as well. It's a multifaceted education and training institution. We are proud of the fact that we anchor our training on the competency-based education and training methodology, TVET. We train in collaboration with stakeholders, the employers, the community, and all the persons who are so important in the training process. The physical facilities that we have here at 1 Eureka Road, which is where our headquarters is located. We have classrooms, computer labs, simulation labs, which are used for our competency-based training. But we also train out in the workplace as well, right across the island, because we have locations in Mandeville and in Montego Bay as well. This institution is registered with the Companies Office of Jamaica under the Companies Act as an independent school with the Ministry of Education and Youth, as a member of the Jamaica Independent Schools Association, and it is also registered with the Management Institute of the United States, which is a leading provider of training and certification for professionals in the cleaning and maintenance industry. Recently, UCJ received stage 2 registration as a higher education institution from the UCJ. It has for a long time been accredited by NCTVET and is an accredited training organization accredited to offer several programs. It recently also received approval from J-TEC, registered as a higher education broker and provider. And very recently, we received approval from the Council of Community Colleges of Jamaica for us to offer 3 occupational associate degree programs. Our mission is to facilitate training and development of individuals so they can perform competently on the job in order to fulfill the needs of the labor markets locally, regionally, and internationally. All right, so our prior learning and recognition, our prior learning experience, our prior learning assessment and recognition experience. For a long time, prior learning has been a critical mode of training, assessment, and recognition at IWED. And it is deliberate that we say training because when we conduct assessment and we find that persons are not ready for the assessment, then we refer them for training. And you'll see a little later how that is done. We also partner with other stakeholders for the assessment of workers on the job. Currently, the institution is distributing levels 1 and 2, levels 1, 2, and 3 National Vocational Qualification certificates that were recently acquired by workers, as well as IWED certificates of completion in cleaning and janitorial services. That really, cleaning and janitorial services is the what we call bread and butter, are the bread and butter courses here at Manpower, because that really is the foundation of the company. Everybody would be familiar with this slide. The National Qualifications Framework of Jamaica is a very important tool to us at IWED, because we use it very extensively in determining we refer to it especially for the level descriptors when we are trying to determine where persons' credentials are situated on the framework. And so we actually use it, as I said, very extensively on a daily basis to guide us when we are helping persons to determine where they are. And also, when we get credentials, we want to also, when we receive credentials from applicants, we also want to be sure as much as possible where it is on the framework they are. Up to this point, our assessments using the PLAR modality has really been levels 1 to 3. However, since we have acquired the tertiary education status, tertiary institution status, we are now planning to offer to use the prior learning mode to also assist persons in the workplace to become certified using prior learning assessment and recognition. And of course, we appreciate the fact that the National Qualifications Framework provides us the flexibility to work with people where they are. So a little bit about this flow chart helps us to understand more clearly how the prior learning assessment and recognition process works at IWED. Sometimes we get applicants through ads, sometimes just through our companies. I don't know if I mentioned that IWED is actually one of 6 companies in the Manpower group of companies. One of our companies, the Manpower and Maintenance Business Services, is responsible for human resources outsourcing. So that company recruits on behalf of other companies. And when having selected persons, before we send them to the employers, we take them through employability skills training. We also follow up on those workers whom we place. And the fact that we have this company makes it very easy for us to keep in touch with HR practitioners in the industry. So we work with them. They refer their staff to us for training, and we use the prior learning assessment and recognition mode as much as possible, but otherwise we do training. So this process starts with the applicant submitting an application to IWED. The application should include a portfolio. We actually are requiring that, depending on what is being assessed, that we get from the applicant something in writing, a letter, something written about their experiences to date. We get references from the employers who have employed them over time, their photos, whatever other credentials they have, evidence of their work experience. Those are some of the things that are expected in the application package. Then, having received the application, the coordinator meets with the facilitator related to the area that the person has applied for, and myself, and we look at the application. We examine the application to determine whether or not this person, should be interviewed. If the person, we don't think what is required in the application is sufficient, we send it back. We actually contact the applicant to let the applicant know that we really need other documents. If we find it's okay, we move on to the interview, and we arrange with the person we agree on an interview date. The interview is conducted if we think the person is ready for assessment, then we refer them for assessment. We refer him or her for assessment. And then if not, then we refer the person to training. The assessment is then conducted. If the person is competent, then the certification or the award or recognition, whatever we call it, they will qualify. If not, then if they're not competent, they are again referred for training, and we arrange for that. This is a repetition of what I just said. Going forward, so as I said, the institution recently received tertiary institution status from both the UCJ, J-TEC, and as well we got approval from CCCJ to offer OAD programs. So we are on a mission to improve the certification, to use this armed with this new status to improve the certification status of the workforce. And so we will be integrating micro-credentials. We will be using, again, the National Qualifications Framework as much as possible to allow for flexibility, because that is the feedback we get from the workers in the workforce. Of course, people who are working really cannot afford to do entire programs. So we are going to be working with the persons who are interested at the higher level. We are going to be using as I said, the National Qualifications Framework. And we're working with specific groups of workers to build their portfolios, because we find that that's one of the areas of need. Workers needing guidance to put their portfolios together to be able to represent what they have done over many years. And also, right now, one of the things we are working on in terms of building capacity to ensure that we have the resources and standards in place, the internal quality assurance mechanisms based on the recommendations that we have gotten from J-TEC and the UCJ following their visits. So we are in the process of building capacity with the intention to ensure that our prior learning assessment and recognition center is up and running and fitting the standards as required by the external quality assurance bodies. One of the things we do, one of the activities we perform very often in working with workers and HR practitioners is conducting gap analysis to determine what exactly is it that workers need. And so we will get expressions of interest for PLAR. And when we do the analyses, we find out that there is need for training. And so we have to work with the HR practitioners in the industry to ensure that, you know, we are actually addressing the needs. Right here at Manpower, today, we are engaged in training a group of supervisors, and this process, we have had to use this process of looking at the performance evaluations of the individuals before we determine, you know, where they fit and whether or not we can conduct PLAR, or we need to put them into training. Going forward, we have to focus on as I said, we're focusing on the higher level certification. And with the go-ahead from CCCJ, we are preparing to start the occupational associate degree programs. And as I said, we are twinning PLAR with micro-credentials to see how we can support workers by providing them with the flexibility by, you know, clustering courses and working with the UCJ to ensure that we are following the quality assurance standards. So in summary, PLAR has provided a flexible approach to expanding access to recognition or certification of the workforce for us, especially here in our companies. Provision of flexible learning and certification pathways for the workers, and, you know, encouraging lifelong learning. One of the things our CEO has encouraged workers to do is to ensure that they are always involved in some type of learning, whether it be through prior learning assessment and recognition, you know, or otherwise. It promotes articulation from one level to another up and across the NQF. And it provides motivation. Somebody said that before, motivating and building confidence in the workers. And we see here how our workers feel and how they behave when they complete an assessment, having been guided before, and then they get the results that, you know, they can move on to the next level. So in a nutshell, that's the experience here at the Institute for Workforce Education and Development. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Mrs. Gale. Mrs. Gale, I really do appreciate you taking the time out today just to really speak about the levels of productivity that can be increased as it relates to persons who become certified through the PLAR framework. I like the fact that you also made mention that some of the benefits include the motivation that it provides and also the level of self-efficacy that individuals are able to achieve over time. Thank you so much for that presentation. I will also now allow persons to ask their questions. If you do have any question for Mrs. Gale, feel free. Now is the time to ask your questions. If not, we'll be going on to our fourth and final speaker, and that's Miss Patrice Batchelor. Any questions so far? I know the information.
I have a question. I have a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Carol Nathan is the name.
Hi, Mrs. Nathan.
When I hear her speak about the base course being janitorial service preparation for that, what other thing do they help their persons to become trained in? Can I just get from her what exactly?
Sure. Mrs. Gale, just confirming if you heard that question from Ms. Nathan.
Yes, thank you. Right. So we offer, as I said in the presentation, we are multifaceted because we have been offering levels 1 to 3 national vocational qualifications of Jamaica programs in housekeeping, customer service, business administration. We have a number of persons who have recently been qualified to that level. Allied health is, let me say that we are grateful for the partnerships we have had with HEART because we have had a lot of support from HEART in that regard. So we do work with the HEART institutions to offer some of these programs. And as I said, we are preparing to offer some associate degree programs. The occupational associate degree programs in executive housekeeping, in customer care and service. And I should tell you, one of the outstanding programs we offer here is the supervisory management and leadership for the global skill services sector. Right now, we are training over 400 persons in either supervisory management or leadership. And that has been going for nearly 1 year now, and we have about 8 months remaining in that. So Ms. Nathan, and for everybody, the cleaning and sanitation programs, as I said, that really is how Manpower started. And that is our core business, really. And so it is important for us to constantly train persons to ensure that, the standards are upheld. And so we always have training to upskill our workers. And we invite employers outside to send their persons for training, and we are getting, we get requests all the time for training. But those are our core, that's our core business. But as I said, we are multifaceted in training, and we have the facilities here. We have leased property next door that we also use for training. Does that answer your question, Ms. Nathan?
Sure, that does answer. Thank you so much.
All righty, thank you so much, Mrs. Gale, and thank you, Ms. Nathan, for your question. Are there any other questions? I like how it's heating up now. The discussions are coming out. The pointers are coming out. Any other question for Mrs. Gale before we go on to our next speaker? All right. So again, Mrs. Gale, thank you for sharing with us. And certainly we know you're going to be staying for the brief panel discussion. So we're looking forward to unlocking and to unpacking additional information in terms of what it is that you're doing at the IWED. All right, so our fourth speaker is Ms. Tetrice Batchelor. And Ms. Batchelor is the principal lecturer at the Trenchtown Polytechnic College. And of course, this college is doing a lot of work in the Trenchtown area, impacting not only students from that community, but also outside of Trenchtown, doing a whole lot of work. Now, Ms. Tetrice Batchelor is an educator and researcher extraordinaire with a keen interest in competency-based, and technical vocational approaches in education. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree with a major in electronics and a minor in physics, and a Master of Philosophy in Physics, both from the University of the West Indies, Mona. Additionally, she holds a postgraduate diploma in education and training from the Vocational Training and Development Institute, VTDI. She has contributed significantly to the development of the educational sector in Jamaica at the national and institutional levels. She served as the occupational officer at the Center for Occupational Studies, COS, within the Ministry of Education and Youth. In this capacity, she provided technical support as a research officer and STEM coordinator at the Excelsior Community College, ECC, leading the development and delivery of applied research projects. She was the 2022 recipient of the Citation of Honor at the ECC Research Day in recognition of trailblazing work in research and innovation. Certainly, it's absolutely my pleasure to welcome right now Ms. Tetrice Batchelor to do her presentation. Ms. Batchelor, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning to you.
Morning. All right, so, first of all, I'd like to thank J-TEC for providing this opportunity for higher education institutions such as ourselves, UTEC, MICO, to really come together and learn from each other in terms of what is being done as it relates to prior learning, assessment, and recognition. All right, so in terms of the presentation, just to give you a brief overview of what our reality is at Trenchtown, the framework that we would have implemented, and our achievements and future plans for PLAR implementation. Now, what is our reality? A report was recently done on Trenchtown, and it alluded to two social problems that are affecting the community. And that is high youth unemployment and limited training options for youth. Further to that, the report alluded to what the certification rate was like for Trenchtown, which really does affect us as an institution in terms of how it is that we create these opportunities for persons to access higher education. Now, what it suggested, what it indicated was that 32.3% of persons in the labor force in Trenchtown were actually certified. But hey, guess what? Only 5% of the labor force is actually certified at the tertiary level. Only 14% reported that their highest certification is a CSEC and GCE-O levels. Now, this is actually very important information for us as a tertiary institution, because it means then that if only 14% of the persons within the community has a minimum certification to access our tertiary level program is 14%, then it really does impact our offerings. Now, this brought us to a space where we had to recenter, refocus, rethink how it is that we're going to meet the needs of the community. So what was our solution to the problems that this report alluded to? We sought prior learning, assessment, and recognition as a solution to address the issues and allowing persons to gain access to higher education opportunities. What does this framework look like at Trenchtown? So, of course, this is a framework that we would have implemented, and it's further emphasized on this slide, which shows the process in how it is that students can access tertiary level programs if it is that they are not qualified or they would not have fully matriculated into the program. Now, once we thought about how it is that we're going to implement this framework, there were some outcomes. Persons, when we promoted this particular framework, persons were eager to be trained. They wanted to be educated and certified. They recognized that it would help in their personal and professional growth. and it would allow them to earn a legitimate income. Now, as a result of this particular framework that was implemented, we would have had some success stories, and we would have recently had our graduation, and we would have had some persons in the community who would have been painters all their life, done masonry all their life, and don't have any formal certification. We would have partnered with the NCTVET, their mobile assessment unit, to have these students assessed and certified at the level 2. Now, once these students were certified at the level 2, it provided now an opportunity for them to access higher education opportunities here at Trenchtown, and gave us an opportunity to now increase our offerings. So these particular students were now on the verge of applying for approval to offer construction and site management, which would have been a good program for these students, having their certification in painting and masonry. In addition to that, we would have used prior learning assessment and recognition to assist in the implementation of the sixth form pathway program, where we would have partnered with secondary institutions to get students to be certified in order to access higher education opportunities available through the sixth form pathway programs. In addition to that, we would have partnered with the help of our principal, Dr. Joseph Edwards Watson. Persons are very creative in Trenchtown, and as such, we decided to increase our program offerings as it relates to prior learning by doing a community engagement and outreach program to further increase certification of our students. Now, this was snippets of our graduation held recently, and we see our masons and our painters quite happy to have received their certification and eager to start their associate degree very soon. In addition to that, we would have graduated, as I said, some students who would have partnered with secondary institutions, recognizing that customer service is something that we're all familiar with. And we would have offered that program in the shortest possible time to allow them to get this certification within reasonable time. In addition to that, the institution, we're a polytechnic college, and as such, competency-based is our mandate. We are going to produce graduates. We are on the path of producing graduates that are now solutions to the issues in the industries for various sectors. And as such, we would have used prior learning and mature entry to offer programs or to give persons an opportunity to access programs, training in restaurant operations, allied health, renewable energy technology, and business process outsourcing. One of our key success stories out of renewable energy, when we did our tracer study, it indicated that one of our students is actually now teaching at their former secondary institution. So, we applaud and commend the work of that institution in working with us to provide these opportunities. In addition to that, just now we are about to graduate someone who would have enrolled in the allied health program. She ran an infirmary for years without any formal certification, but she knows her job. She has the competencies. And as such, we would have included various assessments, on-the-spot assessments, challenge tests, to ensure that she's competent in what it is that she would have alluded to. What is the future for PLAR at Trenchtown? Well, the study, we hold that study very close to us because it really allowed us to to create and to put things in place that will actually meet the needs of the persons in the community. And one of the things that it's pointed to was the skill areas, the persons who have been working in the catering and cooking small shop business, but they have no form of certification. And as such, we're going to be developing our own skills repository, which will allow us to further increase our offerings as it relates to prior learning. Excuse me. In addition to that, we're hoping, excuse me. In addition to that, we're hoping to develop an online platform which will increase our access as it relates to prior learning, assessment, and recognition opportunities. Now, the platform is being conceptualized by a developer that we're working with, and as such, increase the opportunities. So the aim of the online platform is to create remote and convenient methods of assessment. The online platform provides an aesthetically appealing interface that enables candidates and administrators to perform various operations. The PLAR online platform presents a new visual look in the form of a website utilizing functionalities which provide a better experience to users. The website has been designed employing a modern, responsive design approach and an aesthetically appealing look that promises a fun, contemporary experience. Must apologize for the break in my voice. I'm just recovering from the cold. So our platform, it's Ready, Set, 1, 2, 3. So students, learners will be able to access our skills online. They'll be presented with a checklist in which they're able to indicate what it is that they're actually competent in. They'll be able to do an online test, which will actually show the skill gaps. So this is our online platform. This is a flow chart. So an advisor is assigned, online system, the skills assessment. They will select the assessment, online assessment, and submit evidence. Sorry. Panel review, verification process, and statements of attainment. Now, the statements of attainment is what is going to indicate to the learner what is it that they are competent in and what is it that they're not competent in based on the qualification plan that they would have been presented with. This is a template of what that statement of attainment would look like. And we're hoping that we can further, we're going to be doing some more work on this particular system to have it fully launched within the year. That's it. Any questions? Must apologize again.
We were able to hear you quite well, Miss Bachelor. So no worries, no need to apologize. We do understand.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, please, Miss Nathan. Go ahead.
Thank you for that presentation and eye-opener PLAR at Trenchtown, Miss Bachelor.
Yeah.
Just wondering though, when you look at the demographics for the persons who are involved in that institution, are they persons within Trenchtown or are they persons who come from outside of Trenchtown? Who are the persons who are really a part of this institution? I'm just wondering.
A part in terms of our learners?
Learners, definitely.
Right. So
who are the persons who participate and who have graduated from the person? Because why I ask is that I'm familiar with another institution in Trenchtown, and I find, based on long time history, persons really come in from outside of Trenchtown and are part of some of the things that happen in Trenchtown. Who are these persons who are part of this program at Trenchtown? Are they Trenchtowners, if you want to call them that, or are they persons who come from outside of Trenchtown and just utilize the facility there at the institution?
All right, so interestingly, all our graduates, at least over 70% of our graduates are actually from the community. So all those masons that you saw, all those painters that you saw are actually from the community. Recently, I did not include the numbers for our traditional associate degrees, but a lot of our persons, the persons who would have graduated from these programs, are actually from the community.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Wow. Impressive work being done there in Trenchtown. And I'm really heartened to hear the work that you and your team that you're doing, really, Ms. Batchelor. Because again, at the end of the day, we really want to ensure that no youth or no person rather is left behind. And certainly we see where you're concerned that there is a constant thrust to ensuring that absolutely everyone can benefit and everyone can advance and achieve what it is that they so desire. And so thank you for that. Are there any other questions for Ms. Batchelor? Any other questions? All right, real quick, I'm gonna ask the AV team just to pin each member of the, I believe there's a question from Anithia Thompson. It says, is a polytechnic model used everywhere else? Ms. Batchelor.
All right, so in terms of the polytechnic model, we do have another polytechnic institution in Jamaica that's not called a polytechnic. That's out in Westmoreland. So they would have employed the tenets of CBET as it relates to driving their higher education programs and meeting the needs of the community that they're in.
Okay, thank you for that response, Ms. Batchelor. I'm going to ask the member of the AV team to just spotlight the ladies. That would be Ms. Lawrence, Ms. Bowen, Ms. Gale, and Ms. Batchelor. As we will be going into now a brief panel discussion just to really see how best we can unpack a little bit more what it is that the institutions have been doing as it relates to the advancement of the PLAR. All right, so the question I want to ask, ladies, PLAR is to be distinguished from the transfer of academic credit process in that it often evaluates experiential learning. The question now is, are we focusing on credit transfer and an exemption over the evaluation of experiential learning? So based on the work that you are doing currently, are you focused on credit transfer and exemption over the evaluation of experiential learning? And anybody can take that question based on your own context.
I think for us at the Micro, there's a mixture of both. We are an accredited institution, and so there are standards. I think we have more work to do in terms of just accreditation by itself. But you start where you're comfortable and get those who can come into the framework in, and then you start going out based on your mandate to bring persons in so that they can just be accredited. But I think there's a balance, and there needs to be a balance also as we approach getting our nation accredited and certified.
Okay, thank you for
that. I agree.
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Lawrence.
Yes, so at University of Technology, we do both. In fact, our transfer credit and exemption policy, transfer credit and exemption, it looks at transfer credits. One part of it looks at that. And the second half looks at exemptions based on certification. And there's a third part, which looks at exemptions by a prior learning assessment. So all three processes take place across the board. And it is important that all three are given attention, because people come from various backgrounds, people start at different points, and we have to facilitate access, ease of access, that is, and allow persons to articulate between and among institutions. So for example, there are persons who would have started a program at J-TEC and stopped out. And as long as they're coming back within a 7-year period, then they're able to get the credits transferred as long as the modules have not changed within their program of study. However, if they have stopped out longer than 7 years, then the prior learning assessment route would be the option, because we have to ensure that what we are accrediting is actually current and relevant. And so it would be disingenuous of us to issue a certificate dated 2023 for something that someone did from 1990. So we have created this other means for persons to accelerate through their course of study. If they have expired, their studentship has expired, and they're no longer able to pick up where they left off, the PLA option becomes available. And in this case now, they have to demonstrate that they have the competencies that are required of the current module, because our courses of study are generally updated every 5 years. And so we appreciate that content will change. So we cannot very well give them a certificate dated, with a current date for something that they did prior to the latest version of the course of study. So we have the different avenues for persons to accelerate, and we encourage our students to take advantage of these various opportunities.
I love that point that you just made a while ago, Ms. Lawrence, is that even though we're promoting the whole notion of prior learning, really, which would have been information that they would have had in before coming to you, what you're doing now is that you're able to bring them up to speed with regards to the times that we're in, and that's really, really critical as it relates to them remaining relevant within the marketplace. So I would have heard from Ms. Bowen and also Ms. Lawrence. Are there any other persons who'd want to chime in on that question?
Well, let me speak to IWED. Sorry. We have not been using the credit process because our programs are so far, as I said, have been up to level 3, from levels 1 to 3. And we have been using the national vocational qualifications of Jamaica's qualification standards. And so we have actually been, clustering the units accordingly. So we really have not yet ventured into the use of the assignment of credits. But now moving into the realm of tertiary institution, I know that we will be working with individuals in terms of, looking at their credentials and assigning credits, valuing their credentials based on, thank God we have the National Qualifications Framework, and we have also the tertiary framework that UCJ has always used. That's what I am accustomed to using before the National Qualifications Framework, was launched. And so I know that as we move into that, in order to be able to to provide flexibility for workers, because most of our clients are workers in the workplace, and they really depend on the flexibility that can be provided for them to achieve certification. So I know that there's a lot to learn from what J-TEC and Michael have been doing in terms of the assignment of credits. And I see us partnering with them later on. So ladies, it's good to meet you from afar, but you know, I know that we will have to touch base face to face so that we can speak about, you know, all these things that are necessary for us to advance our people, you know, to the level. I noticed the presentation from Miss Batchelor. I really enjoyed that, and commend the Trenchtown Polytechnic for the work that they've been doing. The data that she shared, really, when I look at it, the certification rate of that Miss Batchelor shared really is in line with the national data, because that's one of the concerns we have, that and we hear the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association president speak about it all the time, the concerns that the workforce, really, we only have 30% of our workforce that's certified. And so all of us here have that responsibility to seek to advance our workers beyond where they are now. And prior learning assessment and recognition plays such an important role in that. But it, you know, what is important, I believe, and we believe here at IWED, is that the higher level certification is going to be more important in terms of having a positive impact on the development of our economy.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Gail, for that. I want to ask the ladies, you've all shared your experiences in terms of what it is that your respective institutions would have been doing as it relates to the implementation of the PLAR. But what would you say has been your greatest challenge to date as it relates to the advancement of that within your space? Because I know, whilst it is that it's a brilliant, absolutely brilliant framework to work with, I do know that there must have been some pushback or even some hesitations hesitation with regards to the advancement or the bolstering of same for you.
Well, PLA it's a fairly novel idea. When compared to long-standing educational traditions.
Exactly.
You know, and we know that change is not an easy feat. Yeah.
Right.
And for example, at my institution, it is a traditional 4-year degree type institution.
Right.
And standards are high. And so to embrace PLA, it took a little bit of doing, and I'm still working at it.
Yeah.
You know, I think in the mind, people are beginning to accept it and to see the value of it, but the body moves a little slower than the mind, so you have to push them both. You know, but I think I have a supportive committee. Carol Nathan is a part of my PLA committee, and I'm so happy that she's with us today. Thanks for supporting Carol. And I saw Professor Shermaine Barrett. She's also one of our key players from the Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies. Haldane Johnson, Dr. Johnson is my manager. He was on as well. Yes, so we do have the support, you know. We would want it to spread a little bit more. And so we're completing a PLAR techniques course just put on by J-TEC and the ministry. And one of the questions for our assignment is, I don't remember it word for word, but the essence of it is, how do you become a PLA advocate? How do you advocate for PLA? You know, one of the biggest challenges is getting buy-in. And I suspect the other panelists would have, you know, faced similar challenges.
Yes.
You know, so getting the buy-in, getting the support, it takes some doing. It takes some doing, but with an active committee, I think that is one of the key ways to bolster support, an active committee. Also having, I know you didn't ask how it is that I'm mitigating the challenges, but I can't help but go into it, right? And another thing that has helped is having belonging to professional organizations. So as I had indicated, I belong to the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, which provides excellent support. You get a lot of international players to share their experiences and to provide guidance and so on. So getting the buy-in, and of course, I don't know if this is a similar situation for the other institutions, but having the financial support as well to push some of the ideas.
I am very happy you spoke about the finances.
Yes. And I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about a little bit about J-TEC situation. We are, do I need to say it?
Listen,
I'm not sure I need to go into the details, but the financial support, and I'm hoping that persons who have the wherewithal to make some changes where that is concerned. Yes, external to J-TEC, of course. I'm hoping that things will start looking up so that we can actually have a well-funded program too. Because I mean, it's not to benefit us per se, it's to benefit the nation. So
absolutely.
Why shouldn't we get the support?
I'm very happy that you're a brave advocate, Miss Lawrence, because really and truly, to be honest with you and quite frank, I think conversations like this, many institutions tend to shy away from because of the perceived notion of what it entails. But I think at the end of the day, it's for the greater good. And I mean, you working in this space, you would have seen the success stories. You would have seen how PLA has really brought persons from being at one level to advancing to another level. And so you know the true stories. But again, as you rightly said, things like this cannot happen unless there is sufficient funding. Right, technical support is I believe to some it's there, and I mean J-TEC is providing that kind of support, but certainly the financial aspect of it is definitely going to be critical. I see both Miss Batchelor's hand and Miss Gale's hand. Miss Batchelor, I'm going to go with you, and then Miss Gale to make your point.
So in terms of Trenchtown Polytechnic, one of our challenges as it relates to this thrust for prior learning recognition is developmental portfolios. What we find is that a lot of persons would come to us, they hear about it, but in terms of the evidence, many persons, they don't recognize the importance of getting that evidence together to suggest that you are competent in this particular field. So we find that when we talk to them, oh, Mrs. Musician must do that, or artist, when you talk about portfolio, they align it to a particular career path. But in general, it's something that we ought to encourage from as early as high school. To have persons, once it is that they have some evidence to suggest that they have these skill sets, they should start putting that portfolio together, because it does help. It's one of the approaches to prior learning assessment and recognition.
Awesome. So that's a critical point, Miss Batchelor, that portfolio thing, because a lot of people take it for granted, that it's when I go, it's word of mouth. But when you're able to really tangibly show what you would have been involved in over the years and being able to demonstrate that, it really does help in terms of you being able to move forward in that program. Miss Gale, thank you so much, Miss Batchelor. Go ahead, Ms.
I
Gail.
don't think I need to say anything more because what Ms. Batula said is just what I was going to say. It is the biggest headache, you know, especially for skilled people. And these are the people who are usually doing a PLAR, you know, from our experience. Michael and J-TEC would have probably more academic people, and you know, it probably would be easier. So for example, writing a letter, writing your bio, you know, just writing about what you have done over time, and you know, sharing experiences and so on. That for us is the biggest challenge, because that's so important. And also just documentation, you know, that's a serious challenge. And I like the suggestion she made that, you know, we need to be encouraging students to start putting together their portfolios, you know.
I agree.
And to photograph what you have done and get somebody in authority to sign it, and you know, so that, you know, we can use it as evidence of your experience.
Wow, thank you for that, Ms. Gail. I see Ms. Bowen's hand, and then I'll go to Ms. Lawrence. Go ahead.
Yes, one challenge I noted is that sometimes it's a long haul. It's not always instant assessment. With the fact that we are an accredited institution means that we have to operate within a framework. And that framework cannot be compromised. It has to be criteria-based. And so the assessment must match what you are expected to do. So yes, you may be able to do this particular skill, but we're a teacher training institution as well. And the fact is, as teachers, we have a soft spot for people who want a second, third, fourth, fifth chance at life. And so getting persons to appreciate that it's a process sometimes, and the process sometimes is costly. For example, for our pump program, it's a year-long program, and these are at-risk men. And the fact is, many of them don't have the finances, as Ms. said earlier, to go through the program. So getting sponsorship for some of them is something that we have had to embark on, just to try to allow them to have that opportunity to realize their dreams. Because the fact is, if we don't help them to achieve these dreams, then we see so many things happening in our society and wonder why. Because they have dreams and they have aspirations, and there's no clear path to achieving these. So a part of what we have had to do is to sit down with them and say, okay, this is your plan. This is where you are now. It's going to take you a little while. It will not be instantaneous, but look at where you have. This is what we will credit you for it. And let us chart that path going forward, getting them to stay focused without that instant gratification. I want it now, get me now, is a big deal for us, because we have to operate within the framework of our accreditation and how we have been designed to operate.
So true. Thank you for that, Ms. Bowen. Ms. Lawrence?
Yes, just want to pick up on two things. Ms. Gail mentioned that perhaps J-TEC and Michael don't really have some of the, you know, the challenges as it relates to documentation. When our students have to present portfolios in an attempt to get exempted from modules, we too have the challenge with getting them to produce the documentary evidence. A number of them, well, sometimes it's not even their fault, because some of the things that we ask for, they just don't have. So for example, performance appraisal documents. There are many organizations out there that do not do performance appraisals. So we have to find another way for them to demonstrate, you know, or to provide evidence. We've had to, our students who do portfolios, they normally, you know, write a portion of it, you know, themselves, and then they have the documented evidence to support. We've had to be injecting some kind of practical component as part of that assessment as well, because there are times when the assessor needs to see that the student is capable of doing something You know, for example, the course, the module may be a drawing module. Student can get somebody to draw the thing and submit it for them. Have somebody legitimate enough sign up to say this was done by John Brown, when in fact it wasn't. So we've had to diversify the ways in which we try to ensure that what the student is producing is actually their own work. So we do have our challenges, but you know, we managed to get around it. But there is another challenge that I faced. I've mentioned it before, not in today's session, but I've mentioned it to J-TEC before. So for our undergraduate matriculation, we get applications from all over. Right? There isn't an instance where there are two applications that are the same. And especially some of these overseas qualifications, it becomes a bit of a task to determine whether or not they're equivalent to what is required by our institution. And so I've asked J-TEC to send us on some training of some sort so that we can be in a position to assess, you know, these applications. I've developed a measure of competence over the years after having done research on a number of these qualifications and so on. But I don't know if some kind of formal training could be conducted so that I can be certified as somebody who can assess qualifications from Uganda or from Namibia or some other far out place, because those applications do come. I've received applications with qualifications from Africa, right? And so just to formalize my competence, I believe I'm fairly competent at it, but I'd like something to say, yes, I am. So formal training, PLA Army.
So the confirmation, I love it. PLA Army, yes. I like it.
Yes,
and
but
guess what?
So what I found that I've had to be doing, sometimes these things come to me and I say, you know what? Even though I think I know what I'm doing, I prefer for UCJ to do it. And when UCJ does it and sends the thing back to me, I'm like, this is exactly what I had thought.
True.
Right? But because I don't have the certificate to say that I'm qualified to do this, sometimes I feel a little bit inadequate. And so, PLA Army.
And not to worry, you know, Miss Lawrence, because as you were speaking, I noted that a comment came in from Mrs. Seymour Hall from J-TEC, and she said, guess what? We will definitely plan for this.
Please.
So your advocacy is indeed working, and I'm certain that the institutions here will benefit from such a training in terms of how you're really able to rightly assess, because you're so right. We don't only get applicants from here in Jamaica. We do have persons from overseas, and we want to ensure that we have the international standard where we can, you know, we know how to assess. So
the NQF is useful, you know, but it can go so far and no more.
So true.
So we need that extended
Agreed.
Yes.
Thanks so much, ladies. What I would also want, I think you would have probably touched on it based on the discussion just now, but I still want to go to it because I believe that a discussion like this can really help to amplify more support for the PLAR. How do you think that J-TEC, by extension, the Ministry of Education, can really help to support you, your institution, in terms of how you move forward with the PLAR implementation? I know you hinted at it, but just to kind of zoom in a little bit more, because you're now advocating for that, how can the ministry through the J-TEC support you in that regard? So I know first one from Ms. Lawrence, so we need to PLAR you, which is allow you to be able to really actively assess you know, when persons come to you. But again, what are the other things that you would really want in terms of support?
You know, I think J-TEC has been doing well with the sensitization seminars and so on that you have been doing. And I appreciate the document that you recently published, which seeks to explain, break down the national qualifications framework. I don't know if I've missed the seminars, and what you have been, but I believe, and I'm not, I know you asked the question, how can you help us? But, you know, I think perhaps more institutions as well. The use of the national qualifications framework, it's an extensive document. And when I work with employers, I find that they are not so au fait with, some of them not aware of the existence of the national qualifications framework, which is such an important tool, you know, for the advancement of the education system.
Right.
But especially those of us who work with employers and employees, we have to break down. I mean, when we sit with applicants and we look at the level descriptors and we, you know, speak to them, show them where we think they might be, right? In terms of the framework, or which level they might be. I find that, you know, they are at sea, they don't understand. And so if J-TEC could provide more education for the system, education system first, and also employers. That
and by education, you're referring to capacity building, Ms.
Yes,
Bell?
yes.
Okay,
Right.
All right.
Yes, I think that's really I know that's an enormous responsibility, but we have to find a way to keep the national qualifications framework on the agenda, on the lips of people. You know, educators must always be speaking about it, because when you talk about certification, when you talk about qualifications, right, there has to be some reference to the national qualifications framework. And remember, you know, that the programs that we develop, these qualifications are going to the students who acquire these qualifications are taking them all over the world.
Yes.
And so it is very important that our qualifications are, I noticed J-TEC doing a sensitization in terms of how the qualifications fit on the framework. And so it is so important that when we are developing our programs, that we ensure that they are comparable. That's one of the things too, that we tend to misguide people, so that especially people who are on the TVET track, they might do a level 4 and where we tell them that you have an associate degree. And so we have to be knowledgeable enough to say that you have a level 4, it is comparable to, right? Because when they go to when they take it to another institution and expect that the institution is going to accept it as an associate degree,
right?
And the registrar says to them that, listen, because the registrar has to now look at the learning outcomes to see that, you know, they are matching up with what they have.
Yes.
You know, and so I think that education is very important for the practitioners in the education system. And so saying that, I think that is also something that at my institution we would be happy for. You know, we would be pleased to have training in that area so that, you know, people understand more what the national qualifications framework is saying to us.
What the standards are.
Use the language, use the language when we are speaking to people so that we don't misguide them.
Understood. And guess what? Thank you for that, Miss Gail. I believe Miss Hall again, J-TEC, they're making notes. They're hearing you loud and clear. And certainly in the coming weeks, I'm sure we'll be organizing such sessions that you're able to really be brought up to speed in terms of the standards that exist, so you can implement same within your organization. We're winding down right now, but I'm gonna take a final point from Miss Boyne. Miss Boyne, go ahead.
I just want to piggyback on what Ms. Scale said.
Yes.
In a team lead meeting I had, we were having meetings with some industry experts. When the national qualification framework was placed in front of them, they said, so you're going to tell me I must take somebody with this and put them as a manager in my institution? And so there needs to be education across the board about what it means, so that we can all agree and use it in a specific way. The context must be accepted by all. And so that is something that we are gonna have to work on. Doc said it's comparable to what are we articulating? What exactly are we saying that this should mean for someone coming in with this qualification? And the other thing I'd love to see happen is a forum like this, not necessarily in a webinar space, but in a space where, as education institutions, we could sit with each other and figure out how our programs articulate into each other. How someone can leave that Polytechnic Institute and be a part of the MICO to continue on this trajectory. How do we fit one into the other so that persons can continuously take advantage of this lifelong education that we have? Am I going to recognize certification coming from that institution? As the MICO, I want us to be able to sit and figure it out together so that there is no question, there is no differentiation about what values this and what values that, but we are able to receive the output of our colleagues' institution because we appreciate that they are criteria-based and that they meet this standard. And so I recognize the certification coming from you because I'm comfortable in your output that these students are competent and they will fit well in the space that we're operating here.
So so what I'm getting from you, Ms. Boyne, and I must applaud you. That point is an excellent one in that you're saying there needs to be a distinguishable pathway then in terms of how persons are able to be brought up to speed with regards to the levels of certification, but equally so the standards needs to be so much, I would say that they're so deliberate, but equally so pronounced. So when you move from one institution, we're all on the same page. Because I think what you're really alluding to is that sometimes there are discrepancies that when you leave from one institution.
And discrimination too.
And right. But it's to ensure that we're all institutions are on the same path. That should you leave from.
Appreciating the confines that each institution is operating in.
Right, yes.
They would give institution guidelines about what they're able to do. We don't operate of our own will. As accredited institutions, we have a framework that we must operate in. So if that I need this as my output, can I ensure that someone coming from that institution meets that qualification, meets that standard so that they can articulate into a program that I am operating?
I love that. Thank you for that, ladies. I really do appreciate the points that you have raised thus far. I want to do a final question before we close out this webinar because it truly I'm being enlightened as we speak, to be honest with you. I want to ask this final question. What needs to be done, ladies, to really change the perception as it relates to PLAR. I know many of you would have alluded to the benefits, the testimonials, and the transformative effects that it has. But really, what needs to change to ensure that, hey, we're all on the same page, and when people hear PLAR, that they are able to say, yes, this is something that we want in our institution.
Oh.
Oh, I thought you were seeing my hand.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Ms. Lawrence.
Well, one of the first things I think needs to be done is that people need to know about PLA. People are generally afraid of things they know nothing about, or they know little about. And PLA is not a straightforward approach, right? It is multifaceted. It can be confusing to some. People get things mixed up all the time. Portfolio for module exemption, portfolio for graduate matriculation. What's the difference? So educating the populace is key. This is not something that the institutions can take on their own. This has to be from a ministry and J-TEC perspective, right? So we need to hear about PLA more in the public space, in the media, right? And not just to mention the term, but also to educate people. So sensitization sessions, workshops need to be had. And then from the institution's perspective now, perhaps the four of us within our respective institutions need to dive a little bit deeper in terms of informing our own colleagues about prior learning assessment, or PLAR, and what it can do for the institution, what it can do for the students, what it can do for the country at large. So education, advocacy, those things are key. If people don't know about it, if people are apprehensive about it, they might hear that PLA is a backdoor in, or a weird way of getting persons to complete their programs and so on. We have to project it in a positive light and ensure that the population recognizes it as valuable. In first world countries, if you're not doing PLA, you're not doing nothing. We are quite behind in our approach, so we need as a nation to embrace it, but people cannot embrace something that they know nothing about. So advocacy and education, those are key, in my opinion.
Certainly. Thank you for that, Ms. Lawrence. There's a question in the chat. It says, how do we establish a common base which can be used to establish the PLA? I know it's kind of a little bit far-fetched, but if during the discussion anyone can take that, I'd appreciate that. Go ahead, Ms. Batchel.
All right, I'm in agreement with Ms. Lawrence as it relates to sensitizing persons about, many persons don't know about this particular pathway or this opportunity for them to access higher education. And so it is actually important for that to be, the thrust of the ministry and J-TEC, to really get persons, not just, persons, the population, but external stakeholders, employers, to actually know about this as an opportunity for persons to access higher education opportunities. For us at Trenchtown, we have to be very creative in how it is that we offer programs. We can't offer tuition like many other institutions. Persons hear about $100,000 for an associate degree and they run, right? And as such, we have used prior learning assessment as an opportunity for us to be able to offer programs at a reasonable rate and for them to get access to their higher education opportunities quickly. For that, we have used it to resolve a lot of the issues. We have created assessments out of the community itself. So for example, our painters, they were instrumental. Their assessment was painting the school compound, the masonries, they were instrumental in fixing the fencing. So I think what we have to do is just, as institutions, you know, working together, as Ms. Boyne said, and seeing how it is that we can be inclusive in what this framework would actually look like for Jamaica.
Wow, thank you for that, Ms. Batchelor. Ms. Lawrence, I believe there was a question for you. The person had asked, how do we establish a common base which can be used to establish the PLA?
Yes, I saw the question come up and then I started searching for it and it disappeared. So sorry if I'd seen things.
No.
So I think J-TEC would be critical in providing that common base.
Yes.
The NQF would be the framework that we would use to guide us, and the external assessment framework that I see Mrs. Seymour Hall commenting on. What I'd asked for, you know, so those frameworks would be important in guiding us. But in terms of setting up those kinds of conversations, I think J-TEC would be critical.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't prevent us from having our own discussions, right, Ms. Gail? Ms. Gail and I should have met sometime this week, but our schedules just won't allow it. But so institutions can invite institutions. I was invited to speak at MMS the other day, and that's how I met Ms. Gail. And we are going to be having discussions now to see how her students can articulate from, say, level 4 or whatever level within their programs into an academic program at UTEC. And so there's room for
synergy,
individual collaborations.
Yeah.
But there is also room for J-TEC to provide a platform for us to have discussions around it.
Agreed. Thank you for that, Ms. Lawrence. Ladies, it truly has been a pleasure sharing with you this afternoon. And so I'm gonna give you 10 seconds just to give a quick charge to all the persons who are tuning in, who would have heard you before, but again, just reiterate just one point with regards to the PLA. So I'm going to start with Ms. Lawrence because you're the first person on my screen, then Ms. Boyne, then Ms. Gill, then Ms. Batchelor, in that order.
All right, well, prior learning assessment and PLAR, it is the direction in which international higher education institutions are heading. And the sooner we get on the bandwagon, for want of a better expression, the better it will be for us. We are operating in a global space.
Yes.
And if as institutions locally, we don't find a way to work together and to advance or, you know, our programs via PLA, I think we're going to be left behind.
Wow, thanks for that, Ms. Lawrence. Ms. Boyne.
For me, I'd just like to remind us that Jamaica has a wealth of resources when it comes on to our human capital. We are a resilient and resourceful set of persons. And in many cases, persons are retarded from achieving their potential because they're not certified. And if we intend to achieve the development that we want as a nation, it is recognizing these sometimes weird skills that persons have that they can achieve their goals and contribute to not just themselves and their family, but nation building.
Yeah.
And the MICO itself is committed to helping creating courses where these persons can learn to teach these skills, because it's not just going into the formal sector, but we can certify persons as teachers where they can use the skills that they have, the content knowledge and base that they have. And we will equip them with the teacher training skills so that they can pass it on to other persons to ensure that there's a wealth of resources in Jamaica land we love.
Wow, thank you, Ms. Gail, and then Ms. Batchelor.
And I want to end by repeating something that I said in my presentation with reference to what Ms. Batchelor said, the data regarding workforce certification. with over 60% of our workforce not being certified, that really continues to be a challenge to national development. And so we hear it every day from employers and employer representatives. And so, you know, prior learning assessment and recognition is one mode that is presented to workers, especially people who have experience. And so I would want to encourage persons who have been in the workplace for, you know, let's say over 5 years to make use of this opportunity, make use of this pathway. You know, when we use the national qualifications frame, when you look at it, an individual can move from level 1 to level, what is it, 8? Is it still 8, J-TEC? Yes, to level 8.
Yes.
It's 8.
Yes, it's level 1 to 8.
Thank you. Right. So an individual can move from level 1 to level 8. When you look at the national qualifications framework, that's what it shows. Not only that, an individual can move across levels, across pathways, what we call it, from one path into another. So if you're doing vocational, you can move into academic. And so it is important that individuals, workers, pay attention to this and, you know, find an institution that is offering this mode for qualification and let somebody speak to you. I noticed the Dr. Dunpierre, who I have a lot of respect for. In fact, I think she was responsible for leading the development of Jamaica's national qualifications framework. And she mentioned that it is so important for us to, you know, hold the hands of people who are to develop their portfolios. And so we in the institutions really need to, you know, try to facilitate as much as possible people who are showing interest in being certified through prior learning assessment and recognition. But I want to encourage more workers to make use of this opportunity.
More workers.
And come to IWED. Come to us, call us at IWED.
You know, I heard that club coming. I heard it coming in, Miss Gail, and I'm going to charge you for it. No worries, I'm gonna send you the invoice a little later, okay, for that plug. Thank you so much, Miss Gail. Over to you, Miss Bachelor.
I'm not sure what to say because Miss Gail would have said it all. But you know, just you know, once it is that you are interested in you know, attaining or having access to a higher education program, you know, make use, you have no form of certification, make use of this approach. It's as Mrs. Boyne said, no, sorry, Mrs. Lawrence, sometimes it is not, you know, straightforward in terms of you thinking that you can do it in the shortest possible time. Sometimes it's going to take some time, but make use of this opportunity. It is the quickest, easiest way to attain higher education opportunities.
Thank you so much, Miss Bachelor. So ladies, Miss Lawrence, Miss Boyne, Miss Gail, Miss Bachelor, a big thank you for really taking the time to share with us today on the PLAR and certainly the best practices in terms of how we can really move forward in having this innovative approach being as further established within your institutions. And even for those that don't have it, that they'll kind of catch them jealous and realize that this is the way that the world is going, and we definitely need to be on one accord in doing so. So ladies, thank you so much for your time, and thank you viewers for joining us this afternoon for our webinar on the PLAR under the theme Reflections on Best Practices and Innovative Solutions. We've now come to the end, and I really want to thank you for sharing with us your time, your energies, and equally for those of you who asked your questions, for those of you who just wanted to, who you're now thinking on how it is that you can implement this within your school. Well, go ahead. The J-TEC is here to provide support to you and your institution. So with that being said, thank you so much. I am your host, Ruth Lawrence, and it has certainly been my pleasure to facilitate this discussion here today. And before we go, we're going to have a little video as an outro that gives an overview of the PLAR. Thank you so much. Blessings.
Thank you.
Good day, I'm Gabrielle Thompson with an item of interest just in. The Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, J-TEC, is reporting that persons who have learned skills and competencies through experience are now able to get qualified. This is done through the Prior Learning Assessment and Recognition (PLAR) component of the Commission's National Qualification Framework of Jamaica, NQFJ. The PLAR identifies, documents, and assesses prior learning. Getting qualified through PLAR is for persons who have gained experience in various jobs and volunteer activities through a hobby, interests, independent study, or through training courses. Assessing prior learning takes into consideration your portfolio, results of a challenge exam, and your ability to demonstrate your skills. The benefits of this component of the NQFJ include the elimination of duplication of learning, increases self-confidence in learners, validates learning through work and life experiences, identifies areas that require further study, and encourages learners to pursue further qualification. J-TEC says people who fall in these categories are capable of getting hired because they can actively demonstrate their skills through the portfolio of work they have developed. Stay tuned for more items of interest.
Call my mother about this. Hi, Mommy! Were you watching TV? Yeah, breaking news just came in to say that you can get certified based on your experiences, skills, and portfolio. You remember when you were thinking about getting certified in domestic work? Yeah, well, you can contact J-TEC because you've been doing this for a very long time. All you have to do is visit their website at www.qualifications.jtec.gov.jm, or you can call them at 876-977-5115.